Good evening, everyone. Today is the 4th of May, and here are some of the major headlines from the US markets. The Dow Jones Industrial Average started May on the right foot, with the index climbing over 200 points yesterday as growth names took a backseat. The trend continued overnight as Dow futures inched up, though contract links to Nasdaq and S&P 500 were off by 0.3 and 0.1% respectively. Meanwhile, the latest data on the economy is set to arrive this morning, with the US factory orders expected to rise 1.3% in March as consumers demand more goods and services and investors continue to pile into shares that would benefit most from the reopening. Retail stocks led the market advance on Monday, with Gap and Macy's rallying more than 7%. Dillard's closed up nearly 10%, while Urban Outfitters, American Eagle, Nordstrom, and Kohl's all gained more than 5%. Many feel apparel retailers are poised for a big pickup in sales as people order fresh attire to wear to the office or for going out to restaurants and attending other social events. In fact, Jefferies analyst Stephanie Vincing forecast 47.5% of American consumers are planning to purchase apparel over the next 60 to 90 days, citing data from the NPD group. A pandemic era high for air travels was also recorded on Sunday, with over 1.6 million people screened at airports checkpoint across the US. Buying activity picked up within industrials. Boeing and Delta saw heavy trading activity as investors may be taking advantage of depressed pricing and banking on reopenings, declared Chris Larkin, head of brokerage product at E-Trade Financials. More reopening optimism coming in. States are continuing to relax pandemic restrictions due to a series of successful vaccine rollouts. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo announced Monday that most capacity restrictions will be lifted across New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut starting on May 19th, while 24-hour subway services will resume in New York City later this month. We are no longer in a state of emergency, added Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who signed an executive order that immediately suspended the state's remaining public health restrictions. News on vaccines for teen comes in as the FDA is preparing to authorize the use of Pfizer biotech coronavirus vaccine in adolescents 12 to 15 years old by early next week, according to the New York Times, opening up the US vaccination campaign to millions more people. If it is approved, the CDC's Vaccine Advisory Panel is likely to meet the following day to review the clinical trial data and make recommendations for the vaccine's use in young teenagers. The expansion would be a major development in country's vaccination campaign, but it is likely to divide parents between those who are eager to expand the level of immunity and those that are skeptical about the long-term side effects. With much of the world banking a surplus of vaccine made in the US, the use could also raise questions about whether the supply should be targeted to an age group that so far appears to be mostly spared from the severe side effects of the disease. According to statistics, as of Monday, about 65 million vaccine doses has been delivered but not administered, including 31 million doses of Pfizer biotech vaccine, nearly 25 million doses of Moderna's, and 10 million doses of Johnson & Johnson's. Pfizer is authorized for ages 16 and up. Meanwhile, Moderna is authorized for ages 18 and up. Moderna also expects results soon from its own clinical trial involving adolescents ages 12 to 17, followed by results for children 6 months to 12 years old later this year. The banks that are flush with cash is usually a good thing, as they generally means a lot of lending, but something else is already in the US financial systems. Banks like JP Morgan and Citigroup have recently been advising large corporate clients to move their savings out of deposits and into the money markets. According to the Financial Times, a wave of cash flooding banks' balance sheet during the pandemic is responsible for the latest flows and could have profound effects on the US lenders. In the recent quarters, big banks have detailed weaker than expected loan demand and have pushed out the timeline of when they predict it would to bounce back. In the absence of lending, extra deposits can be costly for banks, putting pressure on their regulatory ratios and eventually requiring them to hold more capital. Strategically moving the deposits to money market funds would be advantageous as the instruments are managed via their asset management divisions and are not included in the leverage ratios. The four largest US banks, JP Morgan, Citibank, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo, amassed nearly $1 trillion in additional deposits last year due to the scale of fiscal stimulus. Well, how long will it last? Is the major question. Well, it's not clear, but it could be the trend for a while given the scale of fiscal stimulus being released into the economy. After a great deal of thought and a lot of work on our relationship, we have made the decision to end our marriage, Bill and Melinda Gates wrote in a statement on Twitter. The couple met at a Microsoft in 1987, where Melinda had been working as a product manager, and the two had been married for 27 years. Though the pair in a statement assured the public that they will continue to work together at their foundation despite ending their marriage, the news could send shockwaves across their projects. In the latest 13F filings for the period ended 31st December 20, top holdings by value in descending order, including Berkshire Hathaway, Waste Management, Caterpillar, Canadian National, Walmart, Ecolab, Crown Castle, FedEx, and UPS. Two stocks in which the foundation also has a large stake, more than 10% of shares outstanding, included Schrodinger and Coca-Cola FEMSA. Most of the other holdings were below $1 billion in market value, and their ownership consisted of less than 3% of shares outstanding in the associated stock. The Seattle based Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is the most influential private foundation in the world with an endowment worth nearly $50 billion. It is focused on the global health and US education issues since incorporating in 2000. People may also recall when the world's richest persons, Jeff Bezos and his partner Mackenzie Scott, called it quits 2 years ago. This is how their wealth ended up splitting between them. Tiffany and Company is introducing its first ever men's engagement ring amid a rise in gender fluid fashion trends and same-sex marriages. The line is named after the company's founder, Charles Lewis Tiffany, and will be available in three types of diamond cuts measuring up to 4.3 carats. The thicker brands, which come in either platinum or titanium, will also differentiate the ring for women's styles. Will any of the Gates be making any purchase for the next proposal? While Tiffany's is an expensive luxury retailer, it is also a trendsetter for the industry. In 1886, Tiffany introduced the engagement ring as we know it today, with the introduction of the Tiffany setting, which remains one of its best known styles to date. The company even did more than $4 billion in jewelry sales last year, with women's engagement rings representing about 26% of their total revenue. Some of the major stock updates. Warren Buffett's Warren Buffett names Greg Abel his successor at Berkshire Hathaway. Down to $5 billion, Yahoo and AOL leaves Verizon for Apollo Global. Tyson challenges Beyond Meat with plant-based burgers. Traeger joins drone delivery race with grocery pilot. Apple versus Epic key takeaways for the antitrust trial. Sizzling interest sees Ethereum surge above $3,400. Lumber gets jacked as prices push further into record territory. US COVID 19 vaccine demand dips as vaccine rates climb up. Under Armour pays $9 million to resolve SEC accounting probe. DuPont loses overwhelming vote for transparency on plastic pollution. Some of the Monday's key earnings. Enterprise product partners down by 0.3% despite strong Q1 results. Omega Healthcare up by 0.6% after hours, showing modest improvements. On Semiconductors down by 3.7% as investors shook off Q1 beats upside outlook. Realty income up by 0.7% after hours on pace to reach investment guidance. Now some of the updates of the world markets. In Asia, Japan closed, Hong Kong up by 0.9%, China closed, India down by 0.1%. So I'm sorry, 1%. In Europe at midday, London up by 0.7%, Paris up by 0.5%, and Frankfurt up by 0.3%. In the futures market, Dow up by 0.1%, S&P down by 0.1%, and Nasdaq by 0.3%. Crude up by 1.7% to $65.59. Gold down by 0.5% at $1,782.20. Bitcoin down by 3.4% to $56,505. 10-year Treasury yield up by 1 basis point to 1.62%. That's all for today's headlines. Thank you.